Hello, my name is Claire, and this is my informal assessment presentation. I've chosen to present on Think, Pair, Share, a technique that I find really easy to use, versatile, and a fantastic learning tool. I hope you'll be inspired to try it as well. Let's start by talking a little bit about how Think, Pair, Share works. The first step is to organize your class into pairs, or into trios, any kind of small group. It's just that Think, Trio, Share doesn't sound quite so catchy. Next, you want to give each group a question or a topic for discussion. This is a very versatile technique, so you can really ask them anything. You might want them to define vocabulary words, discuss ethical problems, do review questions. It can be pretty much anything. I teach in the trades, so I'd be more likely to ask them to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of different types of adhesive. But you probably don't teach in the trades, so you'll ask them to discuss the finer points of constitutional law or some small detail of IV insertion. It will really work for anything though, which is the beauty of it. After you've handed out the topics, ask the pairs to come together and discuss their topic or question together. You want to give a set amount of time for this to help everyone keep focused, and keep it a short amount of time too. This is an exercise that you want to really keep moving along. After everyone's had time to discuss, you call the class back together, and then you call on some or all of the groups to share their thoughts and conclusions with the class. Let's talk about some of the advantages to using Think, Pair, Share. One thing I really like about this technique is that it actively gets students involved in the learning process. They're not just sitting in there in their desks listening to you talk, and you're not just standing there up at the front talking at them and hoping and wondering whether they're really understanding what you're trying to put across. Students really have a role in the learning process when you use this technique. As well, it helps students assimilate new ideas with knowledge they already have. I know for myself, if I can take a new idea and integrate it with some ideas I already have, some knowledge I possess, and really think about it and apply it to my life and my way of thinking, I'm far more apt to have a good understanding of it, and I'm also way more likely to remember it well. Another advantage of Think, Pair, Share is that it adds variety and interest to the class. The students are up, they're moving around, they're talking to each other. It's a good way to switch things up and just add a bit of variety. Think, Pair, Share can also help identify gaps in knowledge. As you walk around the room listening to the students talk, you'll be able to figure out when they're on the wrong track and help them get back on the right one. It's a good, informal, informative review process that way. Another advantage to Think, Pair, Share is that it really helps the students learn in a cooperative manner. For me, teaching in the trades, the students are a part of the apprenticeship system, and they're used to teaching and working and learning together in the shop. The newer apprentices learn from the master carpenters or the journeymen, and they in turn pass information down to even newer apprentices. It's a great way to replicate this in the classroom. And I think in any field it's fantastic if the students can help each other learn. Finally, Think, Pair, Share works with absolutely any subject or any level of complexity. It's an incredibly versatile tool, so you can use it in any class or on any aspect of the topic that you teach. Nothing can be all good, so let's address some of the disadvantages of Think, Pair, Share. Some students can be uncomfortable with speaking in front of the class, and they can get a little bit nervous about the presentation part of this topic. One way to get around this is to make the presentations very short. This puts a lot less pressure on the students if they know they're not expected to give an epic 5-minute long speech. As well, you can choose to have just one student from each group present. This isn't going to help students improve their public speaking confidence if they just opt out, but it does take the pressure off, and students who don't want to speak can still contribute to the learning process. Another disadvantage is that bad information can be spread. It's important as an instructor using this technique to walk around the class and listen to what's going on, make sure students are on the right track. And it's also important to check in with the students who are presenting and make sure that they're putting across the right information. You want this to be a tool for increasing understanding, not muddying the waters. Finally, Think, Pair, Share can be time-consuming. You can keep a pretty tight rein on the times when you use it, and that's one way to rein that in, but it does tend to take up a bit of time. I think it's a valuable enough tool that it's worthwhile, but it is something to keep in mind. Finally, let's talk about some of the best practices when using Think, Pair, Share. You want to assign the groups for the students and vary them. If you let the students choose their own groups, they will tend to just work with their friends. The stronger students will tend to work with the stronger students, and you won't get as much valuable shared information going on. So it's good to have the students count off, have them draw numbers out of a hat. Use whatever way you want to assign the groups, but make sure that it's you doing that. As well, you need to be clear and consistent about the time you're giving the students for each stage of this exercise. Let them know that they only have 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you're allowing to discuss the idea, and give them heads up on the time as you go. Let them know they're halfway through, let them know they have a minute left, things like that. This helps them keep on track and avoid getting sidetracked. You also want to be consistent and clear about the time allowed for the presentations. As we talked about, this can help make the students less nervous, but it can also help keep the information succinct and just keep the time on track for the class. Finally, it's really important to ensure that the information being presented is correct. We've talked about walking around the class and listening to the groups working, and using that as a way to ensure that no one's getting led down the wrong path. But you also have to be very careful when the presentations are given that students aren't giving out wrong information. This can be slightly awkward because you don't want to correct a student in front of the class or tell them they're wrong, but if someone is getting across information that's a bit confusing or maybe not entirely correct, it's a good time, I think, to open the discussion up to the class. That way everyone can weigh in and the whole class can come to a conclusion about the issue that you're reviewing. This is a good way as a teacher for you to check your own teaching as well. If you notice that students seem to be having trouble understanding a certain issue, it could be a good time to check in on the way you're teaching it and maybe think about doing that a bit differently. In this way, Think, Pair, Share can be an excellent review exercise both for the students and also for yourself as a teacher. I hope this presentation gave you a little bit of insight into what it's like to use Think, Pair, Share, and I hope you'll be inspired to give it a try with your classes at some point. I know I've always found it really enjoyable and productive when I've been using it as a student or as an instructor.